Picture this: you're holding a paternity test in your trembling hands, your husband's face has gone completely white, and all you can do is laugh. Not a happy laugh, the kind of bitter, vindicated laugh that comes from months of being called crazy, paranoid, and jealous. The kind of laugh that means your marriage is about to implode. My name is Sarah, and 3 weeks ago, I became the woman every wife fears becoming and every cheating husband deserves to face. This is the story of how 4 little words, "I told you so," destroyed my family and saved my sanity all at once. Let me take you back to where this nightmare began. 6 months ago, I was living what I thought was the perfect suburban American dream in Maple Grove, Minnesota. White picket fence, golden retriever named Scout, and a husband who I believed loved me more than life itself. David and I had been married for 8 years. High school sweethearts who made it work through college, his stint in the Army, and the early struggles of building careers. He worked as a project manager at a construction company, and I taught 3rd grade at the local elementary school. We were trying for kids, had been trying for 2 years, actually, and every negative pregnancy test felt like another small heartbreak. But David was patient, supportive. "When it happens, babe," he'd say, wrapping me in those strong arms that once made me feel like the safest woman in the world. "We've got all the time in the world." Then Jessica Martinez started working at his company. I remember the first time he mentioned her. We were having dinner at Applebee's, our Tuesday tradition, and he was telling me about his new team member. "Sharp as a tack," he said, cutting into his steak. "Fresh out of college, but she's got great ideas. Really gonna shake things up." The way he said Jessica should have been my first red flag. There was something different in his voice, softer, almost protective. But I was a trusting wife who believed in my husband. I even suggested he invite her over for dinner sometime. God, I was such an idiot. Over the next few weeks, Jessica became a regular fixture in our conversations. "Jessica thinks we should bid on the Morrison project. Jessica found this great new supplier. Jessica, Jessica, Jessica." I started paying attention. David, who used to come home by 6 p.m. sharp, began working late. "Big project," he'd explain, kissing my forehead distractedly. "Jessica's helping me crunch numbers." Then came the phone calls. His phone would buzz during dinner, and he'd glance at it with a guilty smile. "Sorry, babe, work stuff." But I caught glimpses of those text previews. Heart emojis, winky faces, messages that came at 11 p.m. on Sundays. When I confronted him about it, David looked at me like I'd grown a second head. "Sarah, you're being ridiculous. She's a colleague, a friend. You're acting crazy jealous, and it's not attractive." That word, crazy, became his favorite weapon. Every time I brought up my concerns, I was being crazy. Every time I questioned why he was suddenly so invested in mentoring a 24-year-old fresh graduate, I was being paranoid. "Maybe this is why we're having trouble getting pregnant," he said one night after I'd asked why Jessica was calling him at 10 p.m. "You're too stressed out, too suspicious. Women need to be relaxed to conceive." The manipulation was so smooth, so practiced, that I almost believed him. Almost. The beginning of the end came on a rainy Thursday in March. David had left his laptop open on the kitchen counter, something he never did anymore, and a Facebook message notification popped up. From Jessica. My finger hovered over the trackpad. I knew I shouldn't look. Good wives don't snoop. But something in my gut, that primal feminine instinct that evolution gave us to spot threats, screamed at me to click. "Can't wait for tomorrow night. Room 237 at the Hampton Inn. I'll bring the wine you like." The world tilted. My coffee mug slipped from my hands and shattered on our kitchen floor, the same floor where David had proposed 3 years earlier. I screenshotted everything with shaking fingers, my teacher training kicking in with its obsession for documentation and evidence. There were dozens of messages. Months of them. Hotel receipts forwarded via email. Photos of Jessica in lingerie that she'd definitely not bought at Target. And worst of all, conversations about me. "She's getting suspicious again," David had written. "Asking why I'm working so many weekends." "Poor baby," Jessica replied. "I hate that she makes you feel guilty for being ambitious. A real woman would support her man's career." "I know. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd met you first." I vomited right there on my broken coffee mug. That night, I waited. I made David's favorite dinner pot roast with those little potatoes he loved and opened a bottle of wine. I was calm, eerily calm, the kind of calm that comes right before a Category 5 hurricane makes landfall. "How was work, honey?" I asked when he walked through the door at 6:45 p.m. Earlier than usual, probably feeling guilty. "Good, good. Just the usual project management stuff." He kissed my cheek, and I felt nothing. The lips that used to send electricity through my body might as well have been touching a mannequin. "How's Jessica settling in?" A flicker of something crossed his face. Fear? Annoyance? Fine. She's fine. Why? I slid the printed screenshots across our dining room table like I was dealing cards. "Because she seems really excited about tomorrow night at the Hampton Inn." The color drained from David's face so fast I thought he might faint. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Then, the anger came. "You went through my private messages? Sarah, what the hell is wrong with you? That's a complete violation of privacy." The audacity was breathtaking. Here was a man who'd been cheating on me for months, and he was outraged that I'd discovered it. "David, you're having an affair." "I am not having an affair." He slammed his hand on the table so hard our wedding photo fell over. "Jessica and I are colleagues who sometimes grab drinks after work. That's what normal people do, Sarah. They have friendships outside their marriage. Friendships where you book hotel rooms. It was one time, and nothing happened. She was having problems with her roommate and needed somewhere to crash. God, Sarah, you twist everything into this sick fantasy where I'm some kind of cheater." The gaslighting was Olympic level. Even with printed evidence of his betrayal, he was making me feel like the villain. But I'd been a teacher for 6 years. I knew when someone was lying. "Get out," I said quietly. "What?" "Get out of my house. Tonight." "Sarah, you're overreacting. You're letting your jealousy destroy our marriage over nothing. This is exactly why we can't have kids. You're too unstable." That last comment was the final straw. I stood up, looked my husband of 8 years in the eye, and said the words that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "I told you I wasn't crazy. I told you I wasn't paranoid. And when the truth comes out, and it will, I'm going to laugh in your face." David moved in with his brother Mike temporarily while we worked things out. Which really meant while he continued seeing Jessica and I filed for divorce. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Chen who looked like she could tear apart a lying husband for breakfast, advised me to document everything. But here's where the story takes a turn that even I couldn't have predicted. 3 weeks after David moved out, Jessica showed up at my door. At first, I thought she was coming to gloat the other woman claiming her prize. But one look at her face told me something was very, very wrong. She was crying, not pretty movie tears, but ugly, mascara running, snot dripping sobs. "Sarah, I need to talk to you." Every instinct told me to slam the door in her home-wrecking face. But my teacher instincts, the same ones that helped me spot troubled kids who needed help, made me pause. "What could you possibly have to say to me?" "I'm pregnant." The words hit me like a physical blow. Of course she was. Of course the universe would give the other woman the baby that David and I had been trying for. Of course. "Congratulations," I managed to say through gritted teeth. "I'm sure David's thrilled." "That's just it," Jessica said, wiping her nose with her sleeve. "He's not. He's saying it's not his." Now I was confused. "What do you mean it's not his?" "He says we were always careful. He says I must have been seeing someone else. He says," she took a shuddering breath, "he says I'm trying to trap him." And there it was. The moment I realized that David wasn't just a cheater, he was a coward. A man who would seduce a young woman, promise her the world, then abandon her the second things got complicated. "Jessica, how old are you?" 24. "And you believed him when he said he was going to leave me for you?" She nodded miserably. I should have felt vindicated. I should have felt superior. Instead, I felt something I didn't expect: pity. Jessica wasn't a predator, she was another victim. A young woman who'd been manipulated by a master. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "I want to prove he's the father. I want him to take responsibility. But I can't afford a paternity test, and he won't pay for one because he says it's pointless." That's when the most beautiful, terrible idea formed in my mind. How much does a paternity test cost? About $400 for the legal kind. I thought about the $50,000 in our savings account that David thought I didn't know about. The account he'd probably been planning to use to start a new life with Jessica before she got inconveniently pregnant. "I'll pay for it," I said. Jessica's eyes widened. "Why would you do that?" I smiled for the first time in months. "Because, sweetie," I told him, "the truth would come out. And when it does, I'm going to laugh in his face." The next few weeks were like orchestrating the most satisfying revenge plot in history. Jessica and yes, I realize how crazy this sounds, became unlikely allies. She was genuinely remorseful about the affair, explaining that David had told her I was cold, distant, and that we were essentially separated. "He said you were roommates more than husband and wife," she confessed over coffee at Starbucks. "He said you hadn't been intimate in years and were only staying together out of habit." More lies. David and I had been intimate regularly up until the affair started. But cheaters always rewrite history to justify their actions. Jessica agreed to get the paternity test done, but she wanted David to be there when the results came in. "I want to see his face," she said with a strength I hadn't expected from her. "I want him to own what he did." I arranged everything through my lawyer. The test was done at a medical facility downtown, with legal documentation that would hold up in court. David reluctantly agreed to participate after Patricia threatened to subpoena him. "This is ridiculous," he told me over the phone. "I'm only doing this to prove that crazy girl is lying about me being the father. Maybe then you'll believe that I never actually slept with her." Even after being caught, he was still lying. Still gaslighting. Still making me question my sanity. "Whatever you say, David. Sarah, I miss you. I miss us. When this test proves I'm innocent, can we try to work things out? Maybe go to counseling?" I hung up without answering. The appointment was set for Friday, October 15th, at 2 p.m. Patricia arranged for the results to be delivered immediately. No waiting period, no drama. Just cold, hard science. David showed up looking confident, almost smug. He'd gotten a haircut and was wearing the blue shirt I'd bought him for his birthday. Jessica sat across from him, her hands folded over her slightly rounded belly, looking like she might throw up from nerves. I sat between them, which was probably the most awkward seating arrangement in the history of paternity reveals. Dr. Williams, a kind woman in her 50s who'd probably seen every family drama imaginable, entered with a manila envelope. "Well," she said, settling into her chair, "I have the results of the paternity test for Jessica Martinez's unborn child." The silence in the room was deafening. I could hear David's breathing, shallow and quick. Jessica had gone completely still. "David Thompson, drive." Williams continued, looking directly at my husband, "You are the father of this child. The probability of paternity is 99.97%. The change in David's face was instantaneous and beautiful. The smugness vanished, replaced by shock, then panic, then something that looked almost like grief. Jessica started crying, relief, vindication, heartbreak all mixed together. In me? I started laughing, not a polite chuckle or a bitter snort. Full-on, belly-deep laughter that echoed off the medical office walls. I laughed until tears ran down my cheeks, until my sides hurt, until everyone in the room was staring at me like I'd lost my mind. "Sarah?" Dr. Williams asked gently. "Are you all right?" I wiped my eyes and looked directly at David, who was staring at me with a mixture of horror and confusion. "I told you so," I said, my voice steady and clear. "I told you the truth would come out. I told you I wasn't crazy, wasn't paranoid, wasn't imagining things. I told you, David. And now everyone knows exactly who you really are." David's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. The confident man who'd walked in here 20 minutes ago had been replaced by someone who looked lost, defeated, and very, very small. "Sarah, I can explain." "No," I said, standing up and gathering my purse. "You can't. There's literally nothing you can say that will make this better. You cheated. You lied. You gaslit me for months, made me think I was losing my mind, told me my instability was why we couldn't have kids. And now you're going to be a father with the woman you swore you barely knew." I turned to Jessica, who was still crying quietly. "Congratulations, honey. I hope he's a better father than he was a husband." As I reached the door, I turned back one more time. "Oh, and David? I filed the final divorce papers yesterday. You'll be hearing from my lawyer about the settlement. I hope Jessica's worth half of everything we built together." And then I walked out, leaving my cheating husband to face the consequences of his actions for the first time in his life. The story should end there, with me walking into the sunset, vindicated and free. But real life is messier than movies, and the aftermath of that paternity test created waves that are still rippling through our small Minnesota community 6 months later. David tried everything to win me back. Flowers, letters, showing up at my school until the principal had to threaten him with a restraining order. He claimed it was all a mistake, that he loved me, that Jessica had seduced him during a vulnerable moment. But here's what he couldn't explain away: the months of lies, the deliberate gaslighting, the systematic destruction of my self-confidence. Even if the affair had been a moment of weakness, his response to getting caught revealed his true character. Jessica had the baby, a little girl named Emma. David pays child support but isn't involved much in her life. According to mutual friends, he's bitter about the whole situation, claiming both Jessica and I ruined his life. The victim mentality would be laughable if it wasn't so pathetic. As for me, I moved to a cute apartment downtown, got a therapist who specializes in gaslighting recovery, and started dating again. Turns out, when you're not constantly being told you're crazy, paranoid, and unstable, you remember who you actually are underneath all that manipulation. My friends ask if I feel guilty about laughing when the paternity results came back. If I think I was too harsh, too cruel, too vindictive. And here's my answer: for 8 months, that man made me question my sanity. He made me feel like I was losing my grip on reality. He convinced me that my instincts that had served me well for 32 years were wrong. He told me my mental state was preventing us from having children while he was busy creating one with another woman. So no, I don't feel guilty about laughing when the truth finally came to light. I don't feel bad about saying, "I told you so," to the man who spent months telling me I was delusional. But if I'm being completely honest, and this is the part that still keeps me up some nights, there's a darker truth underneath my vindication. That laugh wasn't just about being right. It was about 8 months of suppressed rage finally finding a voice. It was about all the times he made me feel small, crazy, and disposable. It was about the realization that the man I'd loved and trusted had been systematically destroying my sense of reality while building a secret life with someone else. That laugh contained every "you're being paranoid," every "you're too jealous to get pregnant," every "I can't believe you don't trust me." It was the sound of a woman's sanity being restored after months of psychological warfare. Was it cruel? Maybe. Was it petty? Probably. Was it the exact response David had earned through his actions? Absolutely. The most twisted part is that David still doesn't understand what he did wrong. In his mind, he had an affair, something that happens to lots of marriages, and both Jessica and I are overreacting. He can't comprehend that the lying, the gaslighting, and the systematic erosion of my mental health were worse than the cheating itself. Infidelity is a betrayal of trust. But what David did to me was a betrayal of reality itself. So, am I the asshole for telling my husband, "I told you so," and laughing when we got the paternity test results? According to some people, David's family, a few mutual friends who think I should have handled things more gracefully, yes, I am. They think a good woman would have been dignified in her pain, would have taken the high road, would have responded to betrayal with quiet strength rather than vindictive laughter. But here's what I've learned in therapy: sometimes the high road is just another form of self-silencing. Sometimes grace and dignity are just code words for, don't make the man who hurt you feel bad about it. I spent 8 months being the perfect victim, quiet, confused, constantly questioning myself, absorbing his gaslighting without fighting back. The woman who laughed in that medical office wasn't cruel, she was finally, beautifully, authentically herself. My therapist calls it healthy anger. The kind of rage that comes from finally seeing the truth clearly after months of manipulation and lies. The kind of anger that says, "I deserve better than this," instead of, "What did I do wrong?" That laugh was the sound of a woman reclaiming her sanity, her instincts, and her right to trust what she knew to be true. Today, I'm happier than I've been in years. I'm dating a wonderful man named Marcus who thinks my intuition is one of my best qualities, not a character flaw to be managed. When I tell him about suspicious behavior or concerning patterns, he listens instead of dismissing me. When I have concerns, we address them together instead of him telling me I'm crazy. It turns out, when you're not being gaslit 24 hours a day, you're actually pretty mentally stable. David occasionally texts me, usually late at night after he's been drinking, asking if I ever think about what we could have been if I just trusted him more. The irony is lost on him, even now. Jessica and I aren't friends, but we're not enemies either. We're two women who learned the hard way that David Thompson is the kind of man who creates chaos, and then acts surprised when the consequences catch up with him. She's raising her daughter as a single mom while David pays the minimum required child support and complains to anyone who'll listen about being trapped. As for that paternity test, the moment that changed everything, I've never regretted laughing. Not once. Because sometimes, when someone spends months systematically destroying your sense of reality, the only appropriate response to vindication is the kind of laughter that says, I knew I wasn't crazy, and now the whole world knows it too. Some people might call that cruel. I call it justice. And if that makes me the asshole in this story, I'm perfectly fine with that title. Because at the end of the day, I'd rather be an asshole who trusts her instincts than a doormat who ignores red flags in the name of being understanding. The truth has a way of coming out, no matter how much someone tries to bury it. And when it does, sometimes the only honest response is to laugh at the beautiful, terrible poetry of it all. I told him so, and I'm not sorry for saying it.